you know, they didn't have our textbook. They were just experimenting. And that's where we get this convention from, putting the flat sixth. And it seems that all these other experiments were so rare as to point us toward the conclusion that it really doesn't work very well. And I like the analogy. So I have read about people whose parachute didn't open and they survived. Doesn't mean, well, then you don't need a parachute. You know? Well, no, I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds. You know, it's not a guarantee. So let's see, he says 3 things here. Inverted forms, the commonly used inverted forms. Okay, there's no real inversion in this, but that's what he means, is maybe a raised 4 in the bass, or the tonic pitch in the bass, or something else in the bass. Chords so spelled as to resolve other than to the dominant tone. All right, this would have been an experiment where a composer said, you know, we respelled the dominant 7, and we got this German 6. What if we respelled it again? Could we take it someplace else? You know? Let's see. Here's a German 6 where the D sharp goes up to an E, the F goes down to an E, the C natural goes down to a B. What if we spell that as a B sharp going up to a C? You know, could we make it go someplace else? Again, they tried it, they played it, it didn't work, but they tried it. And irregular resolutions of the interval of the augmented 6th. Here's a good example of an experiment, because they're thinking, well, you can have a deceptive cadence, so could I set up an augmented 6th chord and not go where it's supposed to go, like a deceptive cadence? But what actually happened was, it's already deceptive, okay? You have the sound of a dominant 7th, but it pulls someplace else. So trying to have it pull to the new key and then do a deceptive movement on that doesn't really work. In other words, let me see, this one. You're in E flat, you have a dominant 7th, you respell it to pull toward D. That in itself is unexpected. You're in E flat, you're not expecting a chord to pull toward D. So instead of going to a 1, going to a submedian or something is like a deceptive cadence. But it doesn't seem to work very well because it's got a built-in deceptive. You're not expecting it to go to D anyway. So the whole idea of a deceptive cadence is you expect it to go someplace and it goes to a chord with the same tonic pitch, but not the same chord. But if your ear isn't expecting it to go to D, then how can you surprise it by not going to D? Does that make sense? I know it's kind of confusing, but anyway, some composers tried that and it didn't really work. So this is just a kind of, again, in a blue moon you might see, and let's see if I give you just an example. Tchaikovsky, his opera Eugene Onegin. Hugo Wolf. Wolf, I told you, wrote all these really short songs, and each one was an experiment. Wolf was the one, I said I had to analyze a piece. It was in F minor, but there was no F minor triad anywhere in it. So the experiment was, you know, if everything's in F minor except a tonic triad, do you still feel that it's an F minor even though there's no tonic anywhere? When it's over, do you mentally hear the F minor? So his experiments were really wild. So that's where I would expect something like this. Beethoven, okay, you would expect Beethoven to try something interesting. Like the Beethoven one. This is seeing if you can get one of these augmented 6 to go someplace else. Beethoven is looking at that French 6 in between the tonic triad in F and the 5-2 purely from voice leading. So the middle stave, the C goes to a C sharp to a D, chromatic movement up. And then if you look at the left hand, you have an A down to a G down to an F sharp, and an F down to an E flat to a D. So he's got these chromatic movement in opposite directions. That's pretty clever to think of that. Now, to tell you the truth, I doubt anybody's even going to hear that as a French 6. They're probably going to hear it as a passing chord or passing tone or something. But it happened to form a French 6 as it was going from one chord to the other. So once again, these are not things you're going to see in music. They're just really strange occurrences. Oh, Franck, at the bottom of page 283. Franck is, of course, not in the top 10 of composers. He's not even top 100. He's maybe 973 or something. So, yeah. And Franck, he tried some weird things in his music. Or I say weird things. He tried to experiment and see if he could come up with new innovative ones. Page 284, I could really sum up by saying, just because you happen to see the interval of an augmented 6 doesn't mean it's a German 6, French 6, or Italian 6. Let's see. In figure 9.13, I wish he'd tell us we're in the key of F so we could think that way. In the key of F, you might see that second chord where it's got a C in the bass, a B flat, then a G sharp, and an E. And you might say, well, in that G sharp sounds like an augmented. There's the interval of the augmented 6 between the B flat and the G sharp. Okay, somebody, figure 9.13, in the key of F, tell me how we would analyze that second measure there. C, B flat, G sharp, E. There's a way to analyze that, but it's not a German, French, or Italian. It's much simpler. It's something we've had before, but it's not all that common, but it is fairly simple. Stack it in thirds and see what you come up with in the key of F. It's a dominant 7, but there's something unusual about this dominant 7.
That's a B flat.
Well, that's the 7th. That's not unusual for a dominant 7.
Well, shouldn't the B flat be a B?
G sharp.
No, it's the G sharp that's unusual.
Yeah, it's G sharp.
So normally in F you'd spell the dominant 7th C, E, G, B flat. This is a G sharp. Now what did that do to the dominant? It's still a dominant. It's still a dominant 7th, but what did the G sharp do to the quality of the triad?
Where's that?
Augmented, yeah. It is an augmented dominance. So it is unusual. We don't see that very much. It's a dominant, augmented dominant triad with the 7th. But what he's actually saying here is the B flat up to a G sharp, that's the interval of an augmented 6. And that's where the augmented 6 chords get their name. But what he's saying is, you know, that's no guarantee. And in this particular case, you could spell this and respell it trying to find an augmented 6. But all you're going to find is a dominant 7 that's been augmented. Figure 9.14 is another example of that.
How would you write that? How would you write that?
The plus sign after the 5.
Oh.
Dominant with a plus and a 7.
Plus means bad.
They give an example of it in literature. Here's Mendelssohn's Song Without Words. Elmer writes something called Music Without Notes.
Words like men without hats.
He's in E flat, starts out, he's got a 5/7 of 4, so E flat, G, B flat, D flat. It's like a dominant 7th of the subdominant. And then on the 4th beat, the B flat changes to a B natural. That becomes an augmented dominant 7. This is just an example from literature of what we were talking about previously. So only this is a 5 augmented 6/5 of 4. So you write 5 augmented